As promised, we are joined by Gary Numan, who'll be appearing at the Guinness Cork Jazz Festival next week. Gary, how are you tonight?
I'm very well, thank you, Tom. Very well. We've been rehearsing today, so it's been a busy day and hectic, trying to learn everything, but it's gone very well.
How do you feel about being part of the Jazz Festival, Gary?
It was a surprise, to be honest. In fact, when they said to me, they want you to play at the Jazz Festival, I said, well, obviously, no, I'm very flattered to be asked, but do they know what I do now? Do they really understand the sort of music that I'm making? So I said, you really check with them. Check with them. They really do know what I'm doing. So they checked with them, and apparently it's all okay. But I didn't expect to be at a Jazz Festival at any time.
I'm not surprised. Oh, God. So listen, did you just receive an award from Q?
I pick it up tomorrow, actually, tomorrow afternoon. Yeah.
Very good. And that's for innovation in music?
It's the Innovation in Sound Award. So it's for me, coming from a background of electronic music where sound design is an essential part of it, really. For me, it's a fantastic award to get. It's one that's particularly suitable, I think, for the sort of thing that I do, and I'm really proud of it. To have something like that. For me, I've never really seen myself as a musician. I'm not a very good musician, to be really truthful. I've been lucky to have a career out of it. But the thing that I do really love working on is sound. When I make an album, the first month or so, it won't be songs or tunes. It will be sounds, building up a palette of sounds that you then try to find a musical application for. And so to get an award for innovation in sound is really quite special, as it's kind of top of my list of things that I like to do when I'm making music anyway. I'm really not a great guitar player or a great keyboard player. I'm extremely average at best at those things, but I do spend an awful lot of time, and I spent an awful lot of patience, actually, I suppose, on creating sounds. That is my thing.
Right. It's funny to hear you say you're not a musician, having spent a whole life in music.
Yeah, I know, but I've got to be honest. I mean, you have to be honest with yourself. And if I wasn't in my own band, I probably wouldn't ever get a job in somebody else's. I'm lucky I've got my own band, really.
Nobody would have you. So listen, it seems, I've reading different interviews with you on the basis of this, and one thing really struck me is that you've seemed to have re-embraced your older music, and you said that at one point you felt it was like an albatross around your neck. Did you really?
I did, yeah. Until fairly recently, to be honest. I think the thing is, when I was first successful, which was back in 1979, that success was massive. And it created a shadow, in a way, that I never really was able to get out of, and so I think I reacted in a fairly childish way to that. I was so desperate for people to listen to the new stuff or to talk about the new stuff year after year, album after album, and yet the shadow, if you like, of Cars and Off Range Electric and that early success just never went away, and I tried to distance myself from it. So I would play very few old songs live, and rather begrudgingly. And I wouldn't talk about old stuff. I wouldn't have that much to do with it, because I was desperately trying to move away from it and do whatever I could to draw attention to the new stuff. And the thing that's changed is, with the last album, the Splinter album that came out fairly recently, that, for the first time ever, had the most amazing reviews. People talking about it being the best album I've ever made, and all of this stuff. And I felt that with that album, I'd finally achieved that goal of moving out of the shadow of that early success. Now people were saying that I'd written an album that was as good, if not better, than the early stuff. And that, to me, changed everything. And as soon as that happened, I was able to look back at my older songs and that catalogue, and I was able to look at it with some pride, which I'd never really had before. And it really did. It was a lovely feeling to be able to look back at songs and talk about those songs. It's really quite special. And these are the songs that shaped what I've become and the career that I've had. And it was the first time that I've been able to look back at them and really enjoy the fact that I wrote those. These are songs that are now considered to be influential and innovative. They're covered by everybody all the time. They're name dropped all the time as being a big influence on this band and this band and that band. And for the first time ever, I now feel that I can just sit back and say, yeah, I did that. That's cool, and I'm proud of that. Because I really haven't. As I say, for the last 35 years, I've wanted to have nothing to do with him. So it's good. And so now I'm able to go out and do more of the old stuff and mix it with the new stuff and so on. But if I'm really truthful, I'm not someone that looks back. I'm excited about the next album 1,000 times more than I am about playing an old album.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I don't like playing the old stuff now. It's been good fun, and I've been enjoying doing it. We've done some old shows in Los Angeles. We're just about to do some here, and then we're coming to Cork, obviously, with the same list of older songs that we're going to be playing. Nice. So it's good fun, but my big thing is what I'm doing next, and it always will be. What can I do next that I've not done before? That will always be the thing that gets me up in the morning, really.
Right, and so it should be, and it's great that it is. And when you think of bands the bands that stay relevant are the ones who always have new songs and new albums peppering through their sets. But for you though, going back to albums that you'd almost not touched in 30 years, what was that like? You're doing 3 dates, aren't you? You're doing Replicas one night, The Pleasure Principle the next night, and Telecom the next night.
Yeah.
You did that in LA, but you're going to do it again now in London, aren't you?
Yeah, we're doing the same thing in London, a 3-night residency where we do each album each night. Then we go to Manchester where we do a bit of all three. And the same thing in Cork when we arrive to Cork. We're only doing songs from 1980 or before. There's nothing newer than 1980 on any of these shows at all. So we're taking songs from those 3 albums, but we're also taking some from the very first album that I made as well. We're mainly doing those for the encores and on the residency shows. So it really is all old stuff. And the reason for that is that these are the albums that I've largely neglected for a long time. The main 3 that we're doing were all #1 albums, and they're all massive albums in their day. And these are the albums and the songs that helped to shape my entire life. They are very, very important to me, and they've given me life in a way that I've enjoyed. So I do. Now that I can look back on them without being childish, I really do appreciate what they've done for me, and I appreciate the fact that a huge amount of people bought them when they first came out, and to a lot of people they're still important.
Really,
and they have been named as being influential to so many bands that it's almost given them a second lease of life, really. So much of the stuff has been covered. People at 9 Inch Nails and God knows, it goes on and on. Foo Fighters, all these people have all covered these songs, or some of these songs that we're going to be playing on these shows. So they in a way, they've almost got an entirely new generation of people that know about them anyway. So it's not as retro, perhaps, as it might have been seen. But to me, it is, obviously. To me, it's completely retro.
What's it like for you emotionally? Going back to songs that you wrote at the very beginning of your career, when I was reading interviews about you, you were saying you were very nervous. You were so nervous sometimes you'd get sick before gigs. You were just, somebody who was thrust into the limelight. Really, I'd imagine very underprepared for it.
I was when it happened, yeah. I mean, I had no idea what was coming, that's for sure. But I've been doing it such a long time now. I don't get nervous anymore. All the bad things that you worry about happening, they've all happened at one time or another, and nothing's as bad as it seems. Being on stage is just something that when you've done it for such a long time, it becomes as natural as eating the dinner. It really does. So totally happy with that now. And I think with that comes confidence, and with that confidence you relax, and that's really enjoy it. I enjoy it more now than I've ever done before. So that side of it is really, really good. But going back to the older songs, it's a bit weird, because these are things that you wrote when you was a teenager or just coming out of your teens, and you saw life very differently. You hadn't had a life to speak of that you could sing about. And some of it, when I listen to it, it's a little bit embarrassing, the lyrics and the way I saw things. And some of it isn't, so there's an element of that. But people understand that I'm singing songs that I wrote when I was 19 and 20, 21, that sort of age. I think there's a certain amount of tolerance for some of the lyrical side of it, at least. Right. I hope so.
I don't know, I'm sure it will be. It was funny, though, to read that, how much music meant to you at that point, that, school wasn't great for you. I was reading other stuff about you that you think that maybe back then you may have even been slightly on the autistic spectrum when you were in school.
Yeah, I had Asperger's. I had lots of trouble when I was at school. and I was sent to a child psychologist. And eventually I ended up going to St Thomas's Hospital in London, to their child psychiatry unit. And it was there that they found out that I had Asperger's. I don't even think they call it Asperger's anymore. You're just on the autism spectrum these days. They don't have a separate thing for Asperger's. So I had that, and I was kind of I didn't mature very quickly. I was still pretty childish and insular. I didn't have friends, possibly because of the Asperger's. So I was a troubled kid. I got expelled from 2 schools, for behaviour. So I had all sorts of issues when I was younger. But music was the thing. Music was the thing that I loved more than anything. And that pulled me through. That gave you a vehicle. It gave you a way of getting all these thoughts that were in your head and all these troubles that you had and the things that you were bothered about. You could write it all down. You could turn it into music, and it was an outlet for it. And it was really helpful. And that part of me has never changed. I still use music as a kind of as a therapy, or as a way of getting all your pent up, your frustrations and your angers and all these things. It's a way of being able to get that out. And so that is a useful thing. It's very useful for somebody with Asperger's. I honestly think that Asperger's, for somebody in the music business, is an advantage. I've never seen it as a disability or a condition at all. I never have. It means that I'm not very good in social situations. I don't interact very well with other people. But that's a small price to pay for the thing that it does give you. Asperger's gives me a phenomenal amount of. I'm obsessed. I'm absolutely obsessive. My focus is ridiculous. My sense of drive and purpose is phenomenal. And these are things that are very, very useful to have. And of course, emotionally, I'm somewhat detached. I don't feel emotion. I still feel it, but I feel it differently to the way most people feel it. So when I was having all the criticism and the press was slagging me off back in the beginning, it's lovely now, I don't have any of that, but in the beginning it was horrible. It just didn't bother me. It just slid off my back, because that side of things doesn't reach me in the same way. So Asperger's, fantastic thing to have if you're in a band.
Focus and drive, which hasn't gone away. It's great to hear. I was reading on about you've taken the family, you've moved to LA, you've 3 daughters, haven't you? What's it like bringing three kids over to America?
Well, 3 kids anyway, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yes.
The good thing about having 3 kids in America is that you can send them out because it's always sunny. When we lived in England, you'd have 3 kids in the house because it was raining. And they would be fighting and kicking off all the time. That is genuinely, and it sounds like I'm being glib, but I'm really not. In America, because it's always sunny in Los Angeles, they just go out and they've got a swimming pool and a playground. They've got all these things that they can do. And it just makes it so much easier having 3 kids where you can just move them out.
Open the door and let them run away.
Kick up the bum, get out. And then they go off and play. They can all swim like fish. They love it. They love being there. It's a very different lifestyle.
You're not worried about them.
Back in England.
Yeah, you're not worried about them turning into those kind of 90210 kids.
No,
little Miley Cyruses.
I know what you mean. We actually live in the valley. So they are picking up that thing where when some Americans talk, it's every sentence sounds like 3 questions. And I was going to the shops, and I went down the corner, and I went to there, and everything goes up at the end, and that's what they do in that. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
So annoying. Keep saying to them, speak English. I don't know what you're saying. Speak English to me.
That's only going to get worse, Gary. So.
They started to replace the T with a D because Americans can't say D. Now, water becomes water and little becomes little. And they started doing that. And so I stopped them and said, how do you spell little? L-I-T-T. Exactly. T. Say your T. You don't say little. And then I sound like a granddad and I get really embarrassed. Oh, God, I'm turning into my dad. You're
going to be having these conversations with them for the next 20 or 30 years. Listen, Gary, continue to enjoy it. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Look forward to seeing you with your new jazz direction down in Cork.
Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Gary, lovely talking to you. Thanks very much for joining us. See you in Cork.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Bye-bye.